Took a week off of the restaurant, took a week off of work to come out here and to see the sandhills in the fall and to do some filming and to show you guys why I love Nebraska so much, why I would rather vacation in the western sandhills, the western part of the state, than go to Europe, because I think it's like no place else on earth. It's just amazing. Talk about how I decided to open a seasonally driven, fine dining, farm-to-table restaurant in middle America in the height of the economy collapse. We opened the restaurant in December of 2010. I was seeking funding in 2008, which was like the height of the recession. No one was giving funding for really anything, let alone high-risk ventures like restaurants with a failure rate of like something crazy like 90%. I guess I was determined. I was running a steakhouse in the adjacent hotel. I was teaching full-time, culinary school at Metro. I was teaching the meat fabrication class. I was working full-time. I had always dreamt of opening a restaurant. The financial side of it's pretty daunting, upwards of, over $1 million to get something up and going. And I didn't really know how exactly I was going to do it. To continue to grow, I felt like I needed to open my own place, because the type of food sourcing, the type of cooking, the from-scratch cooking, the making all of your own staple ingredients, the canning of the local foods for the winter months, nobody was doing it. So there wasn't anywhere where I could go and learn this and be part of somebody else's vision or somebody else's restaurant. I had to create it because it didn't exist yet. When we first started, when we opened the restaurant, we started sourcing whole animals. It wasn't because it was because it was my only option. There weren't farmers that were sourcing out parted animals. They were only, taking whole animals to the butcher, and so I had to figure out how to break them down head to tail. So I wrote a business plan. I approached over 18 banks with, over a 100-page business plan and 40-page performa that analyzed everything from, guess check average, down to how many sheets of toilet paper people would use in a day, to how many paper towels staff would use when they wash their hands. I spent over 1,000 hours writing our original performa on how the first couple years at the restaurant would look. I went to over 18 banks and I heard, man, this is really detailed, this is incredible, but I heard no every time. I really feel like in most businesses, right, there's this magic formula that makes it work. Like in the hospitality business, I call it the Holy Trinity. It's the food, the service, or the hospitality, and the financials, and you can't really have two of the legs without the third. They really all kind of depend on one another. You can't go to a restaurant and have great service and bad food. You probably won't come back. You can't go to a restaurant and have amazing food and shitty service, or you're not going to come back. And you can go to a restaurant and have amazing food and amazing service, and if they have their head in their ass and their financials are in the garbage, they're going to go out of business. It's like they are all so equally important. Horseback riding? Yeah, of course it's discouraging. You hear no a lot, but at some point you're going to hear yes. And if it was easy, I feel like everyone would do it. And it's not that I think things should be hard, because they shouldn't be hard, but it should take commitment. Because it makes you thankful, and it makes you grateful when it works. And I think that it's so much different running restaurants or any business, I'm sure, when it's your skin in the game. I was fortunate to run restaurants for other people before I had the opportunity to start my own. But it is entirely different when it's your money versus somebody else's money, even if you've always run their business like it was your own, which I tried to do. You know, I always thought about when I was running somebody else's kitchen or, you know, the hotel, I had always thought about running it like it was my own money, but it is entirely different when it is your ass on the line, when you're the one that has to make the bank loans, when it's your mortgage that you have to pay, when it's your kids that like do or do not eat if you are or not successful. From that squeeze, like, comes the greatness. That's when we, you know, I mean, maybe not all of us, but I think that's when you learn how to perform the best, because you have to. There's, you know, there's no way out other than just doing it. So after hearing no a lot, I was fortunate to finally hear yes. And our funding kind of came by way of a mixed bag. Came from some traditional lending through a bank for a portion of it. It came through with some corporate sponsorship that helped us with a huge portion of our upfront expenses. And it came through with a private angel investor. So there's so many avenues to approach, you know, traditional bank lending, private equity groups, venture capitalists, angel investors, and there's no real one right way to do it. It's going to be a mixed bag for everybody, you know, but it was, you know, I have one business partner and it was my name on all of the loans. And so for me, is a lot of pressure. Some people source, you know, through restaurant groups where there's less responsibility for, you know, everybody, and everybody has their own kind of department that they focus on and specialize in. What's this? Is this still in business? But it's seasonal? Rocky Ford Camp concessions. God, I wish I would have come here when they were open. So when you're looking at like investor groups, there's a few different kinds. Like a venture capitalist, for example. A venture capitalist works with a pool of people like, okay, and I'll get into what angel investors are, but they work with people like angel investors, or they work with private investors that pool all their money together. And they invest in this venture capitalist who invests in small businesses or growing businesses, or, you know, what you call like a hockey stick business where it's really high growth. So all venture capitalists, they have a different dollar amount in their portfolio. So some might work with a $10 million portfolio, some might work with a $100 million portfolio, some might work with a $100,000 portfolio. And that money is broken up with several different investors, so one person isn't totally out if a business doesn't work out. So it's a little bit of security for the particular investor, and it's also security knowing that there are other investors that are vested in a business, so that there's other people with skin in the game. So venture capitalists, and sometimes they put their own money in, so sometimes, you know, so venture capitalists, sometimes they're just spending other investors' money, sometimes they're spending investor and some of their own money. Yeah, so we're gonna get out. I'm pulled over on this bridge that's just going over the Niobrara, and there's this amazing little waterfall I want you guys to see. See, I just feel so lucky to be able to call Nebraska home. I mean, it's like, I don't know how you couldn't fall in love with it. Do you not feel like you're not in Nebraska right now? It's like if you haven't seen it, if you haven't experienced it, you don't believe it. Because people think of Nebraska as like flyover state, cornfields, soybeans, and there's just so much more to the state. Then you have what's called an angel investor, who we work with, that really invests all of their own funds. Angel investors are a lot of times entrepreneurs, or were at one point, that have made all of their own money, And so they oftentimes invest in what feels good to them. It's a relationship-based business. Think of it like this. You borrow money from a bank, it's a pretty straightforward relationship. You borrow money, you owe them money. Of course, they want you to be successful because if you're successful, they're successful, but at the end of the day, they want their money. I get it, and there's nothing wrong with that. A venture capitalist is going to have more, they're going to have more interest in your long-term success because oftentimes in exchange for a loan, they're going to want equity in the company because as the company grows and the company becomes worth more money, if you're ever looking to exit or you're ever looking for a sale, their equity is going to be worth more in the end than it was when they came on board. And an angel investor is the same way. They're successful if you're successful, and so it's typically not done on a loan. It's typically done on an exchange for equity. So they give you money for an equity stake in your company with the goodwill and good faith that as the company grows, their value is going to grow and their stake in the company is going to be worth more. I love non-traditional lending because it's just so much more intimate. It's this community that cares about the success of the company. It's not just it's not just a fiscal transaction. You actually have this community that cares about your success. I think that starting a restaurant has to start from passion. Those of us that start these businesses from a place of passion have fiscal responsibility to it or a financial background or learn the financial side of the business because that's not why we did it in the first place. People that start a restaurant to make money, they're gonna make money because that's why they started the restaurant in the first place. The food might not be the focal point. It might not be at the heart of what they're doing because their mission is to make money. And so chances are they probably will because they'll cut costs or they'll shave food costs or they'll cut labor or they'll do whatever they have to do or to make means necessary. Somebody like myself that started a restaurant out of passion or somebody that that's worked in a different career their whole life and then had this dream to open a restaurant and they're say in their mid-30s or 40s or 50s or whatever and they decide to do this on a whim because they've always wanted to. I'm sure the food is going to be amazing, the service is probably going to be amazing, the place is going to be clean and look great because you actually care, but you gotta know the numbers because at the end of the day everything that we do from a hospitality perspective is wonderful, but none of it would matter if we weren't able to balance the books and we weren't able to do things on the financial side on the back end to make it all work. When we wrote our original performa, it was to the point of which we knew how many covers we had to do every day. And then of those covers, we broke them up into 4 different groups, 4 different types of diners. One that would do a tasting menu, one that would order a la carte, one that would eat at the bar, and then one that would eat in the dining room, order a la carte, but that wouldn't drink alcohol. And then of those 4, say we broke it up even further. So one that would order a tasting menu and do wine pairings, one, and then part of so there was a percentage of guests that would order a tasting menu. It was say 20% of overall diners would order a tasting menu, and then of those 20% of guests that would order a tasting menu, maybe 40% of them would order wine pairings, so we would include that in our budgets. And then of the other 60%, 20 would order wine by the glass, 20% wouldn't drink, 20% would drink cocktails. So that only makes up, so all of that only makes up 20% of your overall dining. And we would look at the bar guests. How many people would just eat food? How many people would drink cocktails? How many people would drink wine by the glass? So on and so forth. To the point where we had like 15 different guest profiles, and we knew to the penny of what we needed to do every day in order just to break even, in order to be profitable and all of those things. You build in what's called a Q factor in restaurants, right? It's like it's like the stuff that you gotta pay for but you can't really charge for, like toilet paper in the bathroom, like hand towels to dry your hands in the restroom, like a parting gift that you give a guest. Like we give guests cookies when they leave. We give guests an amuse-bouche. You give guests bread and butter. And all that stuff costs you money, but you can't really charge for it. So you have to build in what's called a Q factor. And that Q factor is all of these things added up together that makes up a certain dollar amount. Say it's $1.27, say it's $2.24, whatever. It's different for each guest. It costs us a different amount of money for a guest in the dining room versus a guest that eats in the bar. It costs us a different amount of money for a guest that's part of a larger party than a guest that's part of a two-top. And you've got to take this Q factor and you've got to build it into your menu pricing so that you account for it. So you can't necessarily add $2.24 to every entree. So you got to break that up even further. You got to look at your appetizers versus your entrees versus your bar items. And you've got to give all of those things a section of what's called this Q factor to make up the total dollar amount. It's up, isn't it? It's crazy. But I mean, that's what you got to do. It's the difference between making it and breaking it. Think if every guest costs you $2 non-tangible items and you do 1,000 guests a week and you're not charging for that. Like, that's the difference between staying open and closing your doors.